Hi guys, today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 10 tips to increase your vocabulary. I'm so glad to hear that you've been enjoying my English language videos and I love reading your comments. So thank you very much for always coming back and engaging and leaving lovely comments. I really do appreciate it. I'll leave my English language playlist here in case you want to catch up with any previous videos that I've done on the subject. But today I'm going to be talking about vocabulary. A lot of you have left comments in my previous videos asking for tips on how to increase your vocabulary, and I thought I would round up my 10 best tips, the things that I find that help me the most to build my vocabulary. Just a quick little introduction in case this is the first video of mine you're watching. I am originally from Brazil and I have been living in the UK for about 7 years now. I learned English as a foreign language. My first language is Portuguese, and I decided to start making these videos on how I became fluent in English, how I got a British accent, and just generally sharing my English language learning journey. Learning new languages is a passion of mine, and I think that has definitely contributed towards how quickly I became fluent in English. So I hope you like this video, and let's get to the top 10 tips. Tip number 1 is to keep a diary of new words that you come across. You can keep a physical diary where you write things down, or you can also write things on your phone, which is my preferred method because I always have my phone on me. So it's just quicker and easier, and it's a good way to make sure that you always have those words on you if you want to refer back to them. So let's say that you came across a new word today. I, for example, came across the word preposterous today. I hadn't come across that word before, so I made sure to write it down on my notes. And that word means something that is not common sense, or something that is absurd or ridiculous. So if you think someone has a completely ridiculous idea, you could say that idea is preposterous. So I learned that word today, and that has gone straight into my little word diary. Tip number 2 is to try and learn as many synonyms as possible of the words that you already know, because that is going to increase your vocabulary so much. And if you don't know what a synonym is a word that means exactly the same thing as the word that you already know. So for example, a synonym of the word preposterous would be absurd. So if I wanted to expand that even more, I would look in a thesaurus. A good place to look is thesaurus.com. So I just have thesaurus.com open here on my phone, and I'm going to look at more synonyms of the word preposterous. So you have things like absurd, crazy, excessive, exorbitant, extravagant, extreme, fantastic, foolish, and many more. So you get the gist, and sometimes that just triggers your brain to find even more words that you wouldn't think to be associated with that word, and that's a really great way to build up your vocabulary. Imagine that you just look at one word and you realize that you already know 5 or 6 words that mean exactly the same thing as that word. Tip number 3 is to take stock, and by that I mean every once in a while, look around you, look the room that you're in. What do you know about that room? If you're just chilling out at home, sitting in your living room or you're in the kitchen, just look around you and start naming things that you know about that room. So I'm currently in my office/study room, and if I look around, I see the most basic things like door, window, curtain, laptop. So just look around you and name all the things that you know, and you might find things that you don't know. And in that case, if you don't know a word, look it up, write it in your little word diary, and every time you go back to that room, you're going to look at that item that you just wrote, and it's going to help you build your vocabulary slowly. So if you do that to every single room of your house, then you go and do that to your school or your workplace, then slowly you're going to start adding on to your vocabulary. Tip number 4 is to dig deeper. Try and explore a new topic, maybe not every single day, but every once in a while, possibly once a week or once every 2 weeks, depending on how frequently you're practicing your English. Look for something in the news or in a magazine or in a newspaper and find a topic that you're interested in and explore that topic. I myself love photography, and I've started to take an interest in learning all the jargon and all the specific language that goes with photography. There are lots of specific terms like aperture, depth of field, and shutter speed. And these are all things that are specific to the subject of photography or videography. That is a great way to improve your vocabulary, because if you like that topic, then you're likely to talk about that topic with your friends. Tip number 5 is to try and find connections between English words and your own native language words. You're bound to know a lot more words in your native language, and sometimes those words are fairly similar to English. So I'll just give you a quick little example of a word that's on my mind at the moment. In Portuguese, the word preposição is very similar to the word preposition in English, both in the way that they are spelled and in the way that they sound. So if I were to try and make a connection between the word in Portuguese and the word in English, that would save me a lot of time trying to figure out what that word in English means. Obviously, that doesn't work for every single word, and there are many words out there that give you a false sense of security into thinking that you know what they mean, when in an actual fact they mean something completely different. So if you're in doubt, always check in a dictionary. But as a general rule, it's a good way to build your vocabulary if you can find those connections between English words and your native language. Tip number 6 is to deconstruct words. And by that I mean get to the root of a word to understand its meaning. This is something that I practice every single day, and I have done ever since I started learning English. It's something that interests me in any case because I love languages, and even in Portuguese I do this deconstruction technique because I like understanding the meaning behind the words. And I think that's one of the most important steps to becoming good at reading English. If you can figure out the meaning of words that you don't know just by deconstructing them whilst you read them, you're saving yourself a lot of time and a lot of effort having to go back and forth into a dictionary. I look at 2 different things. First, I look at the context, and then I look at the word structure, so at the word itself and how that word is formed. So let's say you're reading a book and it says something like the diamond ring disappeared, and you don't know what that word disappeared means. First, take that word on its own and try and deconstruct it. So break it apart into separate categories. So I would deconstruct that word as dis, appear, and ed at the end. And then I would try and figure out what each part of that word means. So if I know what the word appear means, then that's already helping me out loads. And I know that appear usually means that something became visible or noticeable. So what are these 2 connections doing to that word to change its meaning? The prefix dis usually tells me that that is a negative or a reversing connotation to that word. So it's changing its meaning to the opposite and the contrary. So from that deconstruction, I would be inclined to think that the word appear has changed its meaning to the opposite because of the prefix dis. Then the suffix ed tells me that that is changed to the past tense. So it's not something that's happened in the present, it's something that happened in the past. And so by that, I suddenly figure out that the word disappeared means something that's vanished, something that was there but suddenly is not there anymore. So I think that's a great way of learning new vocabulary without necessarily having to go back and forth into a dictionary. Tip number 7 is to do the opposite of tip number 6 and to aggregate. So group words that are similar together and try and categorize them, and you'll find that you know probably about 10 to 15 words that all come from the same root. So for example, I'm thinking of the word act. You can find words that are similar or come from the same root as act, such as activity, action, acting, actor, actress, and all of those are coming from the same root. So you could probably try and figure out the meaning of these words without looking at a dictionary, just by aggregating those words all under the same root. Tip number 8 is to use an app on your phone that will give you a new word every day to learn. It might seem something simple, but there are 365 days in the year, and if you have 365 new words in a year, then that's a lot of new words in your vocabulary. So an app that I like to use on my phone is just dictionary.com, and it gives me a new word every single day. So here's the word for today, and it's something that I actually don't know what it means, so that would be great for my little word diary that I mentioned on tip number 1. So the word here is Chanticleer, and it's a noun. Let's just press the little sound button to see if I pronounced it correctly.
Chanticleer.
Chanticleer, I think.
Chanticleer.
Chanticleer. So I actually said Chanticleer, but I think it's more of like a ch. Chanticleer. It says here that Chanticleer is a noun, which means a rooster, used as a proper name in medieval fables. A rooster, I think, is a cockerel in British English. So that is what Chanticleer means, and that was my word of the day. Tip number 9 is to make a commitment to apply the new words that you learned as many times as possible during that day. So for example, set yourself a target to use a new word at least 5 times that day. It will force you to have to remember that word, which means that that word will become part of your everyday vocabulary for that day. You might forget it in the future, but some words might stick around, and that will slowly help to build your vocabulary. So my target for today is to use this word, Chanticleer, 5 times so that I don't forget it. Now, how am I going to find 5 situations where I need to mention a rooster or a cockerel so that I can use that word? That's going to be a big challenge, but I'm up for it. And my last tip, tip number 10, is to be curious and inquisitive. If you have an interest or if you develop an interest in learning new words, then you'll find that your vocabulary will grow much quicker. So instead of always relying on the words that you already know, find other new and exciting words out there. And that is my secret to developing a good vocabulary in English. That 10th tip there, be curious and be inquisitive, is what made me grow my vocabulary so much. If I hadn't been interested in learning all these new words, my vocabulary would never be as close to what it is at the moment. And to be honest, it's not something that's easy to do. You do have to force yourself sometimes, and you do have to try and memorize certain things because certain words just don't make sense, and you do have to memorize some of them. So making the effort to stay curious and inquisitive is definitely what helped me the most to build my own vocabulary in English. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, as always, make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. If they're learning English, this video might be helpful to them as well. And if you like my videos, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss my future English language videos. And make sure to check out my English language playlist with all of the videos that I've done so far on the topic of English speaking, English fluency, and English learning. I hope you're all having a lovely day, and I'll see you very soon. Bye.